Hello and welcome back to Learn It from a Layman. I am Carl Christensen, joined by Matt and Johnny, the pediatrician Nielsen.
What an intro.
Johnny, you are in a minority today, not only because you're a doctor, but because you are right-handed. So today we're going to talk about being, handedness in general, but left-handed specifically. And as most know, I'd say everyone over a certain age knows that left-handed people are more scarce. It does put us in the unique position as a podcast to have a majority of our hosts being left-handed. So how do you feel about being the minority?
I feel really good about it because this usually puts me in the majority. And I think that there's some stats that you might get into about being left-handed being very stressful and decreasing lifespan or something. I don't know.
Oh, Johnny. Well, I get to cherry pick the stats I want to for this podcast. Okay, yes, we'll dive into a little bit of that. There's a lot of information.
Exactly what we want our listeners to have is biased information.
That's what we aim for. That's the world that we live in, Johnny. Okay. We're gonna have lots of information. I because I am left-handed, we do get like inside information. There's going to be some what I like to term like microaggressions against the left-handed community that most right-handed people are not aware of, that I will discuss near the end of the podcast. So you got to stick around for that, because these are things that we need to address as a society. It's important, or maybe not, but we'll find out later. So Johnny, starting off, we're going to talk a little bit about why are people left-handed? And I've got some research here, but Johnny, they didn't discuss this in medical school then? Wasn't like a class on handedness?
Yeah, there was a class on handedness. I think I slept through it because, I don't need to worry about that because I'm right-handed.
I thought people were left-handed because of sins in a previous life or something.
I think that might be the case.
That might be true. From my recollection, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a long time since I've thought about this, but you have two hemispheres of your brain, and the right hemisphere controls the left side of your body, and the left hemisphere controls the right side of your body. And you typically use one more dominantly than the other, especially the motor cortex, which is what controls your muscles. So people that are left-handed typically are using their right motor cortex more precisely and easier than people that are right-handed. Right-handed people would use the left motor cortex a little bit better.
That sounds very technical, Johnny. But yes, I mean, in general, you're right. So there's the brain part of this. But before we touch on the brain part of this, are you raising your hand because it's your right hand?
This is where it's at, everyone. If you're watching,
if you're watching on YouTube, no, the genetic factor in handedness is interesting because there is a genetic component, but it's not entirely a genetic question. So there was a study, I don't remember, I have the date here somewhere, but done on infants in utero, so fetuses, and they were essentially the group was studying the number of babies in utero that sucked on their left thumb versus their right thumb, and then track them through childhood to see which hand they ended up preferring. That became which hand was dominant. And in utero, I think it was 90% of the babies that sucked on their right hand ended up right-handed, and 10% did not. and 75% of the babies that sucked on their left thumb ended up left-handed. So there was already a strong correlation, some predictive ability of in utero, which tells you that there's a genetic factor. Because the other components of handedness, of course, your social pressures and then it's environmental, as far as what you're seeing out in the world. So those do obviously play a role in handedness. It's not entirely a genetic question, but it is. There's a strong genetic component to handedness. But we see a couple other things, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later. Yeah, okay. There are a couple other factors, but we'll come back to that. But as far as the brain aspect of it, like you said, Johnny, there is the different parts of the brain, and years ago you took us through the different where the different parts of your brain specialize in, or whatever. I don't know.
You're crushing it, Carl. Keep cooking.
When I say whatever a lot, it means I know exactly what I'm talking about. But the left-handed people historically, it's understood that left-handed people use their right brain and right-handed people use their left brain. It's not as clear-cut as that, and in a lot of places, if you just Google that, we'll just say that's a straight-up myth. It is true, however, that, like you said, there are elements of the brain that do correlate with handedness, and the left-handed community do create more cross-hemispherical connections in our brain than right-handed people do, is what I read. So we are forced to think out of the box more often, creating these cross-hemispheric connections, and there, of course, obviously the motor cortex, like you mentioned, is obviously affected because we're using a different side of our brain to use the different side of our body, so it develops differently that way. But yeah, the straight up idea that, like, as a left-handed person, that only the right side of my brain functions. I mean, if that's true, it explains a lot. But
that's where those ideas come from.
Yeah, but it is not. It's not straight up that clear. But there is an effect of handedness on the brain development. Whether or not I didn't see any studies that necessarily tried to demonstrate that was anything more than an environmental adaptation to the fact that left-handed people run into situations that right-handed people don't. And so we have to create connections in our brain that aren't something that right-handed people have to deal with. But there's not a clear benefit to another thing that you hear a lot is that left-handed people are more creative. I didn't know, Johnny. I find it
this
to
is
be
just anecdotal.
No, it is not the case that there's data that demonstrate creativity for handedness outside of, once again, the idea that left-handed people are encounter situations and more adversarial circumstances, as I talk about the microaggressions later, where we have to think of different ways to solve a problem. And so in that way, in as much as necessity is a mother of invention, creativity is part and parcel, something left-handed people have to come up with, because we just, when the world is oriented for right-handed and you deal with left-handed things on the norm, then it's not that we are like Picasso all the time. It's that we are we're MacGyver more often. So
yeah, by the way, coming up with a left-handed victim complex is not a way to become MacGyver. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, I don't have a.
It's almost like you're creative in problem solving because you're able to see things in different aspects.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, there are benefits to it, and like Johnny mentioned, we'll talk a little bit more. There are some downsides to being left-handed, but let's talk. Okay, so on the numbers front, because you hear, I think, the number that everyone talks about is the percentage of the world that is left-handed is approximately 10%. right? 90% right-handed, 10% left-handed, and there is a small percentage, a very small percentage of truly ambidextrous people. Ambidextrous in this case meaning literally no preference measurable, no measurable preference for one hand over another for fine motor or gross motor skills. That people just, there's a very small percentage of the population kind of just do either. But as far as, all right, did you have something to say?
I have a question.
Shoot.
So I don't know if you looked into this, but there are certain parts of the brain that are typically during development only one-sided, like right-sided or left-sided. Do those get flip-flopped at all when somebody is left-handed?
I didn't research that specifically, but when I was looking into the brain information that I was talking a little about earlier, I did find one section, just one little sentence in what I think was a relatively good scientifically written article. It said that there were no like basic structural differences in brain. So I guess the answer would be no, but I don't know that for certain, Johnny.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like you're still going to have, like there's certain language processing type centers in your brain that are, on one hemisphere for like basically the whole human population. So I was wondering if those ever became, flip-flopped, or if there are situations when those are flip-flopped and then it makes the person more likely to be left-handed. I think it would be very, very difficult to figure that out without, making people have a stroke or something.
Yeah, we don't like to do that. It's against certain research standards.
Depends on the decade.
Yeah, back in those early 1900s, you could do a lot. No, I mean there are all of those studies based on people that have had catastrophic strokes or catastrophic injuries that demonstrate that the brain can develop special ability to deal with language in a different part of the brain. It is interesting, but no, specifically for left-handed handedness, it doesn't seem to be the case that the left-handed, the left-handed brain looks structurally different than the right-handed, is what I read.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, the left-handed percentages are different. Interestingly, so the idea generally of 90% right-handed and 10% left-handed is globally more or less correct. It is not, as you drill down, that every sub community of sub section of humanity is equally distributed that way. So certain countries, certain genders have more likelihood of being left-handed, and I thought that really interesting. So, for example, males are, I think it's something like 18%. Or is it 15? About 14 to 15% left-handed, with only like 6% for females. So females are way more likely to be right-handed than a male. So and then the other localities, so countries are more likely. So the Netherlands is the most left-handed country, which I appreciate. Speaking Dutch, I appreciate the left-handed skew in the Dutch community. The United States is right behind the Netherlands as far as left-handed percentage of the population, and then all the way down to China is less than 4%. And I think there's some degree of social pressure still. So you look back at like in the early 1900s in a lot of countries, but especially in the UK, being right-handed was mandatory, right? I think early in the United States as well. If you showed predilection to use your left hand to write, you'd get your hand hit, and you had to sit on your hand. My grandpa described the situation. My grandfather was supposed to be left-handed, went to school and learned to be right-handed because otherwise he'd get his fingers wrapped by the ruler. And so the social pressures and social norms of the country, I think, do have an effect, but it's not the whole thing. So there are other countries, other Asian countries, a bunch of different Asian communities that all demonstrate a relatively similar low percentage of left-handedness. And to some degree, the research that I was looking into tried to essentially explain that away with writing systems, and that left-handed writing of characters is far more complicated, and it just as speaking as a left-handed person, forming characters in kindergarten when everyone's writing them one way and you have to write them the other way is challenging. But because our characters are relatively simple, it's doable. You can imagine when you look at Chinese characters and they are significantly more complex, the idea that I'm now going to pick up my left hand and try to backwards flip, like mirror all of the actions that other people have to do, it makes sense that children would just say, to heck with it, I'm going to go right-handed here. So that would explain some degree of the country-specific percentages. But yeah, it is different. Localities have different percentages, and so that demonstrates obviously that it's not just a genetic thing. Okay, let's talk about the overall perception of left-handedness versus right-handedness. Johnny, your perception is clearly that you are right and I'm wrong.
No, I am right-handed. Are you
well,
saying,
okay, so
are you saying you're wrong-handed?
It is interesting that that is that those things find their way into the language, and that is why they find their way into the language. In various languages, the idea that left means not correct, but right, literally in English, is synonymous with correct, right? Right, correct. And while you could question the etymology there, and that means the word history of whether or not those actually are, fake synonym, whether or not they came in because of the correct hand, it is the case, my understanding, that it is, those do trace back to the fact that right-handed just meant the right way, the correct way. And so that's why right started percolating up as a potential synonym with correct, is that right is correct.
I have another question. This goes
Sure.
a little bit back, but not too far back. Have there been any twin studies on handedness?
Yes. Good question, because I did gloss over that. Gloss over, I mean, I didn't touch on it in the slightest.
So for our listeners, a twin study is can help see what factor of something is genetic, because there's twins that are separated at birth for a variety of reasons and grow up in different households. And if they have some of the same characteristics, then those can be attributed to a genetic preference. So anyway, it can be interesting to look at twin studies for, to see like what percentage of something is genetic versus like environmental.
Yeah, so I didn't read the specific studies, Johnny, but I did find a section that talked about twins and the idea that this question of handedness among twins. So I don't know, whether or not they studied twins that were separated at birth, or how those things work. But the upshot of it was that the study found that 21% of twins are left-handed. Both of them are left-handed. So twice as much as the normal population. And there was some question a long time ago, early studies that were essentially saying that they thought that it would be researchers used to believe that all twins were mirrors of each other, and so one would be left-handed and one would be right-handed, and that obviously was bunk. But it is true that for whatever reason, left-handedness is twice as common in twins.
Oh, that's interesting. What about like the percentage of twins that are left-handed? Is that like when one twin's left-handed, the other twin is left-handed? Is that
right.
Also like, I'm sure that's very high.
Yeah, I honestly didn't find that piece of data, okay. So sorry. But that does actually bring me to my next point, which is, so Johnny already mentioned there is a link between stress and left-handedness. But the one I was looking at specifically was, so the predictive ability of determining a child's handedness before they demonstrate it. So a British study found that very stressed out moms were significantly more likely to have left-handed babies. So another study found that women who are depressed and or stressed during their pregnancies were also more likely. So it correlates with birth weight and the age of the mother. All of those things positively correlate with, so the higher the mother's age, the lower the birth weight, the more likely the baby is to be left-handed. So some degrees of stress seem to make a baby more likely to be left-handed, which obviously doesn't bode well for the future of the child. But the stress, so that brought me to the next, that twin question of like, well, twins cause a more stressful pregnancy. And so it does make sense just from that alone that the twins would be more likely to be left-handed, because their mothers are going to have a more stressful pregnancy, because twin pregnancies are more stressful on the female body. So I don't know that those things are 100% match up like that, but they came back to back in the article I was looking at. So
I wonder if so some countries, especially like the United States right now, the age that women are deciding to have children is increasing. I wonder if the amount of these is increasing as well. I don't know if there's any data on that. Probably not, because it's not a ton of time since that's happened. But it's something interesting to think of.
Yeah, for sure, and all they do have an effect, obviously. So yeah, I don't know that there's been a large scale study on that, and not to undermine all the things that I've said, but these studies there are frequent studies on handedness, and some of these are pretty well established, but in a lot of cases, the handedness studies are kind of one-offs and not super large. So you have to take their results with some degree of uncertainty, because it's just they are somewhat predictive in certain elements of health, but outside of that, handedness is something that we've determined isn't like a huge factor in increasing the quality of life or those types of things. So there hasn't been a lot of research money thrown at handedness. So
yeah,
not yet,
I'm sure there's not like we're going to send you to school to teach you how to be left-handed because it's going to be good for your heart. Your cardiovascular health is really going to improve.
Right. Yeah, that's not the case. Interesting aside here before we move on to my next point is there are left-handed animals. Not a lot. Most animals, so and even our closest mammalian cousins, apes, orangutans, whatever else, they are 50-50 split handedness as far as the research I was looking into. They just use both hands, and it doesn't seem like they have a preference. Kangaroos, however, very left-handed. So that's for our Australian listeners. So if you're going to fight a kangaroo, expect the jab from the right and the
southpaw, right?
Yeah. That's like, just line up, just expect it coming from the left. And parrots also, apparently, which they don't have hands, which makes it slightly more difficult, but they use their left claw. So 90% of parrots use their left claw to pick things up.
Do you think that's because they're right-handed and they are using that for better balance? Questions we need to ask.
We should ask.
Too many confounding variables.
I will interview a parrot shortly after this.
The kangaroo thing is a little interesting. I wonder if it's because the toilets spin the opposite way when you flush. Wonder if that has anything to do with it.
That's probably it. That probably all by itself explains it.
Yeah. We should write a paper on that. I'm sure nobody has.
Yes, and nobody ever will, is my guess. At least not one that'll get published. Okay, there historically also cavemen, Neanderthals were also left-handed. There were some, not obviously all, but there was. It's not like it's a construct of the last few thousand years. This is something that apparently that developed a long time ago, and they were able to demonstrate that Neanderthals were used their left hand for particular skills in some cases. So, yeah, that's an interesting aside. Okay. By the way, the word sinister, Johnny, do you know what the word sinister means?
Yeah, it means left.
It does, right? It comes from the word left. The root word there comes from, I believe, Latin, Greek.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Latin sinister means left, and dexter means right.
Right, exactly. And sinister in English, for those that aren't familiar with the word nowadays, means like shady and bad, right? So that's just another case of us being, we are a heavily, marginalized community. So victim complex, right, Matt? Okay. Are there any benefits of being left-handed?
I think the silence from Matt said it all.
Matt loves being left-handed. He loves it. Okay, Johnny, do you think there are any benefits of being left-handed?
Okay, so this is yes. So in Sweden, they eat using their left hand. They use a knife in their right hand and a fork in their left. And so when I went there and was trying to eat with people, I almost lost an eye trying to learn how to eat again. But after a while, I was able to figure out how to use my left hand. But it did take a lot of practice. So I imagine that the movements that you do with the right hand are very minimal compared to the left. So I'm sure that like a left-handed person would be able to eat socially there better than your typical right-handed person. At least that's what I noticed.
There you go. Yeah. So be careful with that fork, huh?
Yeah. It's a good thing I wear glasses. Couple scratched lenses was, that's all it took from me was like a couple scratches, but could have been worse.
Yes. So there are the main benefit, the one that people know of in general, is in sports, of course. You're left-handed, pitcher in baseball is far more likely to succeed than your right-handed pitcher, and that holds true across a number of different sports, a number of different positions in different sports. There is a case, the flip side, where in certain positions you can't have, like left-handed quarterbacks are still pretty rare in football, in American football, because of the way the game is structured. Like if you are left-handed, it means the offensive line, the people protecting you, their jobs actually change a little bit. And so that kind of throws off the structure of the rest of the team. So that is the opposite. But in most cases, being left-handed is a good thing, because you're throwing something at someone, at the other team, at the opposition, that they don't generally see, right? Because left-handeds are only 10% of the world. If suddenly I'm a left-handed tennis player, the other, my opposing player is not going to know, how to deal with my shots as well as he would coming from a right-handed person, because 90% of the time they're going to be dealing with a right-handed person unless they select for left-handed people, which is what happens, right? So left-handed people have more chance of being selected for higher levels of competition in a variety of sports, because they it gives you the ability to change the look of different sports, which is something that obviously you want. But the other thing that I think is interesting is there are benefits to being left-handed in leadership as well. Did you? And this is something I learned in my research. I think it's like 5 of the last 7 presidents of the United States have been left-handed.
Turns out they're 5 of the worst presidents we've had. Just kidding, everyone, go vote.
Yes. So Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama have all been left-handed. And so it is, that's kind of anecdotal. Obviously, that's a pretty small sample size but that is a truly astounding, like, the fact that you would expect 1 of the last 10 and that it's 5 of the last 7. You start thinking, okay, that maybe we're skewing one way instead of just a probability blip. But yeah, essentially what the researchers were thinking is, once again, it's this overcoming feeling of like, I've got to overcome things because I have to overcome my handedness, and therefore I have to overcome like society in a different way, and it gives you this ability to put skills together that maybe other people don't. So it's not like some ability that left-handed people have; it's the necessity of using it that left-handed people potentially have to have. Like I said, it's not the one study I did, and this would be interesting to you, Johnny. Let me see if I can find this really quick. It's essentially a study of neurosurgeons. The authors of a study titled "The Loneliness of the Left-Handed Surgeon" say that left-handed surgeons feel that they are an unorganized minority. Their study found that only 13% of left-handed surgeons were provided with left-handed instruments while training. So it found that there's a lack of laterality related mentoring for left-handed surgical residents. So in the field of medicine, being left-handed is difficult, and the training and the tools that you need might not be given you as a left-handed person. So that's a detriment, once again, of being left-handed. Have you seen that, John?
I wonder if they just notice it more because they're already whiners that expect everything to go wrong for them. Because I'm trying to think of surgical tools that are like typically used, and for the most part, I think that like right and left hand, you would use them the same. I'm trying to think of.
Okay, this is the ones that they mention: scissors, clamps.
The scissors that the clamps you have to like clamp on and off in the opposite way. But a lot of surgeons will practice with both hands so that they can do things with the either hand, so that they can be more skilled surgeons. The scissors are typically not made for like, it's not like your typical scissors where they're like cut out in a way to hold in your right hand more comfortably. These scissors you could hold in either hand comfortably. But yeah, okay. Sorry, I'll be less annoying about it. Just let me hear your list.
Well, it's scissors, it's clamps, and it's needle holders. Those are the ones specifically mentioned. I don't even know what a needle holder is. What is a needle holder?
It's basically like a little. It holds the needle when you're doing like stitches.
Okay.
So the difference is that the way you clamp it and unclamp it is the opposite than the other way, because it has like these little teeth that hook over the top of each other, and so you have to get them to unhook. So you have to use your hands differently to get them to unhook. But like I said, I think, and if there are surgeons listening to this, then good luck in residency and Godspeed. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of surgeons will practice doing both things with both hands to make themselves better. And maybe the lefties just feel like they're, like they are the ones that are complaining more about it. And so now there's all this research on it because the squeaky wheel gets the research and the papers or something like that.
Right.
So
Right.
this goes back to the whole a victim complex is not a way to success in the field of surgery, apparently.
Correct. Yeah.
Good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're going to be a left-handed surgeon, stop complaining and get your work done.
Yeah.
You can send all complaints you can text them to Carl.
With your right hand, because you can figure it out.
Yes. Yes.
Let's talk about
okay.
the discrimination that left-handed scale modelers face.
Yes. That's a frequent feedback. No, okay, it's not. That's something anyone has ever heard of, Matt. So, okay. Let's one other thing before we move on to my microaggressions. So the list of things there could be quite long. But
yeah, that whole thing about not doing the victim complex. Let's just
we're gonna end with
right out the window.
Okay. Last thing is this question of whether or not you can switch your handedness, right? So if you recognize that you're a baseball player and you're a little leaguer, you're 8 years old and you're starting to notice, or your dad's told, your mom's told you that, if only you were left-handed, and you decide, well, maybe I can be. The reality is you can. It is possible to kind of switch your handedness, though. Let's put the caveat in there. You're not actually switching. You can train your brain to do these gross motor skills, refined motor skills, to a very near level of your preferred hand, obviously with a number of hours of training. So as you specialize in trying to do something with the opposite hand, or in the opposite way that you would prefer, you can get to the point where your performance mirrors that of someone who's by default genetically or socially to pick up that hand and do it that way. You can get to near that level or at that level with a certain amount of training, like
see, that's
a baseball.
Healthier message. That's the whole Invictus spirit. I'm the captain of my handedness.
Right. And so that's like my grandpa had to learn how to write right-handed, and it turns out he did it fine. He went on to be a professor. It's not like he struggled because he had to use his right hand. But it doesn't actually.
He didn't struggle, so get over it.
It doesn't. So those connections, those cross-brain connections, and those slight differences in your brain for being a left-handed person, those still persist, though. So just because you decide that you want to do something with the other hand, so if I, as a left-handed person, decided I want to golf right-handed, I would probably be able to. Well, I can't golf anyway, but if I could, I would probably be able to golf right-handed as well as I golf left-handed in, unfortunately, a very small number of hours, given how well I golf. But the brain, the way that my brain works, while it would be, obviously I would be using a slightly different skill set, the brain structure is still the same, as far as the like I said, it's not like left-handed people have a different looking brain, but we use different connections across the brain, and those persist. But there is that element of, if you want it, you go get it. If you want to switch your handedness, it is possible. It does take work, and there's not a lot of reason to do it. But
so what if you're a right-handed person that's pretending to be left-handed? Do you still have? Will you?
Those people are just weird, and we don't acknowledge them ever. Sometimes people just want to be special, and they pick weird ways to try to claim it.
Right. We're talking about Tim. For those of
yes, 100%. Everybody who pays attention should know that.
That's true. Well, we have a lot of longtime listeners, but we have people that just drop in for a podcast every once in a while. And by the way, for our longtime listeners, I apologize. October was insane, so we didn't get one done. But we'll try to get at least one or two done every month for the next few months. But anyway, the Tim factor, the people, it's not even that he's ambidextrous. It's more that he's a poser. And you heard it here. So
heard it here first.
It actually, mixed-handedness is a thing, and something that a lot of people, for example, I actually hit the baseball right-handed. Questionable ability either way, but if I were to play a pickup
Swing at the
softball,
baseball right-handed.
right. If I were to pick up a baseball bat and try to swing at a ball, I would do it right-handed. And so that I'm left-handed in pretty much every other way. But at a baseball, I'm right-handed, which is weird because I golf left-handed, which is insane, right? They're relatively similar motions, but I absolutely swing the bat right-handed and the golf club left-handed. And the reason for that, let me give you that is specifically, I believe, because my dad was right-handed. And guess what we did when I was a kid? We played backyard baseball. And backyard baseball, with my dad teaching me how to swing the bat, boom, there it is.
So I take exception to that because I learned from the same person and am left-handed and still hit left-handed.
Oh, right.
One thing that I don't do left-handed is actually shooting, which is not something I learned from anywhere. I do that right-handed. Like I cannot shoot left-handed.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
Okay. Well, then.
Well, my point to all of that is, no, you can't blame your upbringing on that one. You're just weird.
That's possible. Mixed-handedness, aside from Tim, who we will continue to say is...
Carl is not a true lefty.
I'm a true lefty, Johnny. We played water polo together, Johnny. You know I do everything left hand.
You could tie your hand behind your back and you could still function in the world. So
that's right. Mixed-handedness, though, interestingly, it is actually an indicator of sometimes of slower development in children.
I was certain you were going to say heightened intelligence or something.
I went the other way on you. Mixed-handedness, it says, the study that I said, kids performed worse than lefties in social development, writing, reading, vocabulary, and a variety of other measures. So kids struggle when they have to deal with both. So left-handed for some things, right-handed for other things. Whether or not it's an indicator or a symptom, either way, they struggle. Mixed-handed children. So if you run across someone like that, just help them along, like Tim, for example. Just move them along. They can succeed in life. Tim's done fine. Anyway, okay.
Because of his developmental problems.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, finally, we got to it. Microaggressions.
Wait, haven't we had enough?
No, we haven't.
Are we going to end on a positive note, or are we going back?
Okay, we'll go back to a positive note after this. I have one other positive thing to say, but the microaggressions have to get in here because this is something people have to know. We got to solve this.
Before we get to that, I have some questions.
Okay, shoot.
Mainly about baseball because you follow baseball closely. I know that there are switch hitters that can hit from either side.
Right.
Are there any switch pitchers, or can you do that?
You can, and it is incredibly rare. And if I remember the rule correctly, and it's been a while, you have to declare which hand you're going to use for a batter. And then the batter can declare which batter box he wants to. If it's a switch pitcher versus a switch batter, the pitcher has to declare, "I'm going to pitch left-handed," and then the batter can say, "Well, I'm going to hit left-handed," or vice versa. So yes, it is
an advantage in a way. So it probably isn't that big of an advantage to be a switch pitcher.
That's probably true, but I think I saw one even in the major leagues, and as soon as you see one in the major leagues, you have to think, oh, maybe it is an advantage because that is something you never hear of. And so if one of those guys made it all the way to the major leagues, it seems like a statistical anomaly to me. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, it is uncommon for sure because the fine motor skills of learning how to pitch and the variety of pitches and how to locate, it's incredibly rare to be able to do that with both hands, at least to a passable level. If you're pitching the ball, 90 miles an hour with your left hand, you grab it with your right hand, and you can, lob it in there at 60 miles an hour. You're not a switch pitcher.
Maybe that's your changeup.
Exactly. I only throw changeups with my right hand.
Throws off the batter every time.
Okay. All right. So these are things that I think most people don't even think of.
Back to
Johnny.
road rage.
Yes, exactly. This is pent up anger of almost 40 years. Well, I am so angry. Okay. We'll start with the pretty innocuous ones, but that still gets you. Pick up. Okay, go to your fridge. If everyone's listening with like AirPods or whatever. You can walk away. Go to your fridge. Open it up. In there, you have a milk jug. I guess that might be a United States thing. Whatever.
Yeah,
You've got something.
Canadian listeners have a bag, but
Okay, if you're in the United States,
inclusive.
if you're not in the United States, you don't have to go to your fridge and you. What?
Some people just have a cow. They just milk it.
I don't
feel like we're derailing, but I'm not sure that matters.
It doesn't matter at this point. Nobody cares. Okay, milk jug. Go to your fridge. All right, pick up your milk jug. And for those of you that don't have one, just visualize with me. You're now holding your milk jug. If you're right-handed, obviously you're holding with your right hand. And now read the label. Okay, is it 1%? Is it 2%? Is it skim or whatever? If you're right-handed, you're good to go. You're holding up your milk jug and you're reading the label. If you are left-handed, and if you're not, you should do it now. But your milk jug down, pick it up with your left hand. Try to read the label. Notice that it is now facing away from you. Good luck reading the label. So frustrating.
You see the ingredients first, so you're more health conscious.
I
so why aren't you
refuse to be victimized by milk labels? I'm sorry.
It's Matt. It's just the point of the matter, right? It's just you can't do this to us.
Well, no. See, that's my point about the point and the magnitude of the point. And no, I reject your point.
All right, well then you're going to reject a lot of these, but they're worthwhile anyway. I'm going to state them. Okay, same thing.
Right.
You're in your kitchen. All right, now you're going over to your coffee mugs. All right, and before you pick them up, look at your coffee mugs. See if any of them only have a symbol or the words or whatever printed on one side. Some of them are printed on both sides, and great. They're very inclusive. But some of your mugs will only have words or whatever printed on one side. Now, pick up that mug. Okay, you right-handers are now still reading the words. If you picked it up with your left hand, the words are now facing away from you.
Honestly, I don't know how I have survived in life so far.
I'm
unaware of all of these challenges.
It's so painful.
I would say that the struggle is real, but I'm.
Okay, all right. Two more. Well, one more trivial one, and two. Well, okay. There's only one that's not trivial, but. Okay, the next one is can openers. Once again, also a kitchen thing.
Oh my gosh, not can openers.
The kitchen is a very
limit to this depravity.
I can't stand being in the kitchen, and I think this is why. I don't think I can deal with all the passive aggressive microaggressions against me in the kitchen. So I pick up my can opener and I try to attach it to the can.
Microaggressive towards you.
I think everyone is. My wife is right-handed. So anyway, okay, pick up your can opener, attach it. If you are now trying to open your can left-handed, you are grasping at air. Or you're grasping the can. There's nothing, you can't grab anything. There's not on the left side. Your can opener's twisty thingy is on the right side. You can't do it the other way. It's not possible.
Upside down.
But then, Johnny, you have a problem because when you get your can open, it dumps.
Okay, who opens a can and doesn't dump it? Okay.
Well, but who? Yeah. Well, you try that and you let me know how that goes, because it's going to go poorly. Because yeah. Anyway, okay. So can openers. Then this one is one that this is the one I demonstrate to all my right-handed friends, because
you make friends with those people.
I know. Not anymore. Johnny's the last one. The pen. Go pick up a pen. Go pick up a pencil. Okay, like a normal Bic one or whatever you got, like a, you know, number 2 pencil or whatever. Pick it up. If there's writing on it, if there's not, throw it away. Nobody needs it. Pick up the left hand. No, pick it up with your right hand and look down at your pen. Okay, yeah, exactly. Johnny's showing it on for those of you that are watching on YouTube. Okay, you can read those words, can't you, Johnny? It says postman, doesn't it? Or was that postman? No, what does that say? I don't know what that says.
Carl can't read.
Anyway,
it's papermate.
Papermate. Okay, it says papermate. I struggle with reading as well. It's because, okay, Johnny can read it. Now, Johnny, hold that pen in your left hand. Hold it like a person would write. Now look at that writing. What does that writing say? Gibberish. It says gibberish. It's facing upside down. It's backwards. Because why? Because they hate us. All pens and all pencils are right.
Hold it like this. This is how I gotta hold it. I fixed it.
Nobody can do it. You can't do it. Your pencil and your pen are right-handed. And when you're holding left-handed, how am I supposed to know if it's the number 2 pencil? For me, it doesn't. It looks like a Z pencil, right? So
you just have to ask it if it was tree poop.
Is that
number 2 pencil?
Oh my. Okay, man, we've lost Johnny. Okay, last one, and then we'll hit with a positive note, and we'll be done. I promise. Okay, so this one's a real one. This is a real problem, Matt. You can't pretend this isn't. Everyone out there knows it. Writing systems are right-handed. There are a few old writing systems, like the old Chinese one that went top to bottom, which were slightly less, prejudiced. But you pick up your pencil and you write a paragraph left-handed, then try to read that smudged mess that you just made. Good luck. And then you got all the pencil all over the back of your hand because you just smeared the trash out of it. Because you're left-handed and you're trying to write a writing system that goes left to right, which means you write it and then you wipe your hand across it. So if you're right-handed, guess what? Words are trailing behind your hand as you drag it across the page. What?
Ideally.
Okay. It is the case that I don't know how many Arabic listeners we have. We have some though. And so that is the flip, right? Left to right languages being left-handed would be a positive. And so there is a large percentage of the world that doesn't deal with this. So to those of you that know Arabic or other left to right languages, awesome. Good job. But I have not had to do that.
Are there more that write with their left hands than right hands, or do they still write with their right hands?
That is a good question, Johnny. I should have answered that, but I was just too angry when I was writing these things down.
Sounds like it. I'm not doubting that one bit.
But yes, writing systems are challenging for those of us that have dealt with that, for our whole lives. But yeah, I guess those of you that are Arabic speakers, you let us know if it's more common to be left-handed for you, the left or right languages, because I'd be interested. And maybe the right-handed people have this anger built up inside of them as well. Okay, final thing, and the positive things is for what Johnny mentioned early on. There are some health correlations and statistics that might indicate that left-handed people maybe have longevity questions, but by and large, handedness actually just doesn't matter that much in predicting what you're going to be able to achieve either physically or socially, or there are these small correlations, but the reality is you can overcome all of that with just some generally good habits. Your handedness does not determine your fate. And so the idea that there is some research saying that left-handed people might be more prone to depression. What we're talking about when we look at longevity statistics and depression statistics are percentage of a percentage of like more likely to, and these aren't necessarily, these are correlative, not causative research studies that they have done. So
Also
if you're out there,
more likely to become president, apparently. So
exactly. More likely. So there are upsides, there are downsides, as there are with anything in life. So instead of focusing on the things like I do about how angry you are, you can consider instead that I have things that I can, the positives and whatever you are. If you're right-handed, the world is made for you, right? You are able to deal with society in a cleaner fashion than us left-handed. But if you're left-handed, you've overcome things already, and so keep overcoming. And so that's the positive final message. Johnny or Matt, anything to leave?
I think you've covered everything that we need to know about this subject ever.
for in the history of learning from a layman, that might actually be the first time that what you said right there is true. I think Matt said at the end of the calculus podcast, which
and I was right on that one. Thank you. Nobody needs to find the area of an ellipsoid.
Well, not nobody, just very few people. Anyway, and Johnny, I'm guessing that when a child comes in and they and you find out that they're left-handed, you probably don't take the parent aside and explain to them the challenges that will be associated with being left-handed, right?
I usually give them a ruler that they can start using to wrap the fingers of the child.
Johnny's old school like that,
Okay, for those of you that are actually concerned about that comment, it was a 100% joke. Yeah, I generally I never even ask what hand they are or they prefer. Doesn't really matter too much in the health world.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, you know what? I lied. Because neurologists, and I don't know why, they always ask which hand you are. And I don't know why, but they do.
Aren't neurologists notoriously a snobby bunch?
It's because the neurologists and the surgical, the surgeons are having like a little bit of a, head-to-head type of fight. So they're trying to, right?
We should do a podcast on, interspecialty rivalries within the medical field.
That would be actually fun to do.
Okay, but for real, Johnny? Are you saying they're neurologists?
Yeah, so they really do note it. And I generally, I think it's when they're evaluating somebody for a seizure disorder. And I'm not sure why that's important, but I have seen it noted in several consult notes that I've received back from neurologists. But anyway, so take that how it is, but apparently it's important in neurology and I have no idea why.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, one last little tidbit as we sign off here. I did one piece of research I was going to note before we let. So we're coming up on elections here in the United States, but it turns out left-handed people have more likely choose things on the left. In like if you put two lists in front of a left-handed person and say pick one thing, they're more likely to pick something on the left side, and right-handed people are more likely to pick something on the right side, and that can actually even be drawn out and extrapolated to voting. So it is interesting. So just watch out for that.
Yeah, but that's spatial orientation, left and right. What about political ideology? How prevalent is left-handedness amongst the communists?
Research study to be, so that'll be to continue. So Matt's just pointing out
part two. I look forward
part
to
two
that.
of the left-handed podcast coming soon.
I just thought the left-handed people were more likely to leave a dimpled Chad.
I think you're impugning our ability to
I have nothing for that one.
Okay. Well, on that note, we'll sign off. Good luck, and we'll be back again next podcast. Thanks, guys.